God, I do so love today's modern women, especially how they try and manipulate things to fit their feels. Like this one.
I constantly hear about how men can date into their 40s. I personally don't think this is true and that we should stop perpetuating this idea.
Ah, yes. Beautiful example of the classic female delusions that they create when something doesn't fit their feels. How, when they don't like something, they simply just declare it to be not true. In this case, she knows that men in their 40s aren't going to be interested in her, not in the least. So, in order to cope, she's now trying to manufacture a fantasy in order to avoid accepting that reality. The reality that men well into their 40s, not to mention 50s and 60s, not only can date, but that's their prime time to date. Unlike women who hit the wall at about age 30. You know, kind of like she has.
So, men in their 40s, they say, can date women in their 20s and 30s, and therefore men have a longer dating runway than women do.
And the reason they're saying that is because it's true. Hell, I'm 61, and while I'm already taken and certainly not looking to date, I have women in their 30s and 40s approaching me all the time. Hell, in the past couple of months, I've even had some women who were clearly in their 20s trying to chat me up at the gym. And trust me, they weren't looking for a spot. Well, at least not that kind of spot. And that's with me just doing my workout, headphones on, not trying to get anyone's attention, let alone someone who's my daughter's age and younger. And let's face it, I ain't no Brad Pitt. Sure, I've got money, but those girls, they don't really know that. But she doesn't want to hear that, let alone acknowledge it.
But I disagree with this theory. I think that we have the same dating runway. I just think that women start earlier, end earlier, men start later and later.
The same dating runway, huh? What? What the hell kind of female logic is this? First, she says she refuses to believe that men in their 40s are not in prime dating mode, that they aren't able to pull women in their 20s and 30s. And to justify that belief, now she's talking gibberish. I mean, if men and women are on the same dating runway, then why would one, that would be the women, start earlier, and key point here, end earlier, while men start later and end later? Sorry, darling, those are two things that are diametrically opposed. I mean, I know girl math is 2 plus 2 equals 5, but in this case, it's 2 plus 2 equals complete delusion. But she does make a valid point without knowing it, and in fact, actually proves her belief that men can't date in their 40s completely wrong. Because she is right in saying that women start earlier and end earlier, meaning that they're in their prime starting at about age 18 and running up to about age 30 when the wall inevitably comes a-calling. And men's prime, well, generally speaking, that runs from about mid-30s to late 50s. Oh, wait, that means I'm past my prime. Well, it's a good thing I'm already taken, I guess. Anyway, in saying that, she just discredited her entire assumption that men can't date in their 40s. I mean, hello, duh. That makes about as much sense as believing you can get a sunburn by standing next to a light bulb.
So women typically become of interest to men when they're 18 or younger, and it seems like there's a drop in interest in women who are in their late 30s.
Well, yes, there is a drop in interest when women hit 30. Not late 30s, 30. Oh, and quick point, a small quibble if I may. Your claim that men are interested in women under 18, your toxicity and misandry is showing, darling. Not to mention your double standards, especially considering the number of teachers and other women in your age group who are getting caught every single day, let's say, showing interest in boys under age 18. But I digress.
Now, on the other hand, men don't really become of interest to women until their late 20s and maybe until they're 40.
Huh. You mean all those women I hooked up with back in the 80s, when I was in my 20s, weren't interested in me? Yeah, okay. And again, I ain't nothing special. The fact of the matter is there's plenty of guys out there in their 20s who have no problem getting women's interest. But you see, that again doesn't fit your feels because those men in their 20s, don't want to get a woman's interest. They've taken their ball and gone home. They don't want you, don't need you, and have decided their lives will be far better off without you. Which again goes to why you're coming up with this rationality, or better yet, irrationality, to try and cope. Moving on.
Now, the idea is that men who are in their 40s can date from a wider range of women, but I actually disagree with this and I don't see it practiced often.
Oh, darling, let's be honest. Let's get real. You don't see it because you don't want to see it. You can disagree all you want, but that doesn't change the facts. The facts that men in their 40s are in their prime dating-wise. Look, sweetie, I get it. You want to wallow in that fantasy and delusion that you've created as you try and cope with the reality that men have moved on, and it's perfectly fine for you to do that. But do other women a favor and stop trying to spread that delusion. You aren't helping them, you're hurting them. As I said, this is a textbook example of how the female mind works. They see or hear something they don't like, and rather than acknowledge it, rather than take some accountability and responsibility for it, they just simply deny it. Then they concoct detailed stories to justify that denial, all because they can't handle the reality of it all. And perhaps funniest of all, it's so ingrained in them, they don't even realize they're doing it. Half the time, as this lady has shown, their stories, the ones they make up, actually end up proving the reality they so desperately want to believe doesn't exist.
I think there is a drop off around 44 to 45 for women who are in their 20s and 30s.
Wait, what? What did she just say? Sorry, I gotta rewind the tape here.
I think there is a drop off around 44 to 45 for women who are in their 20s and 30s.
Yeah, that's what I thought she said. So let me get this straight, and I'm gonna quote you so we're clear. There's a drop off around 44 or 45 for women who are in their 20s and 30s. Yeah, okay. Darling, again, your logic confounds me. Confounds all of us. That makes about as much sense as trying to put out a grease fire with gasoline because, well, it's liquid too. I can't. I just can't sometimes.
Because you start to think about a multitude of factors. One being that men are less attractive. They don't take care of themselves like women do. So they're thin, their skin is thinning, they have more wrinkles, they're balding, and they're just not as in shape as they once were.
Oh, honey, projected much? Good Lord, it just gets better and better. And you know, I gotta ask, women have become obsessed with baldness lately. Do they really not know that as they get older, they lose their hair too? Sure, they may not go bald, but the hair they do have, well, it gets lesser and lesser. Especially after years of them pouring toxic chemicals in it because they're never happy with their hair. If it's straight, they want it curly. If it's curly, they want it straight. If it's brunette, they want it blonde. If it's blonde, they want it red. And so on and so on. But there's a good point here. It kind of shows you how women evaluate people, not based on who they are or things they say or do, but strictly on appearance, and only appearance. I mean, judging people based on the amount, shape, or color of their hair is the epitome of shallowness. But women do it day after day. And not just to men, but to other women too.
I also think that women start to consider, okay, if I was to have kids with this person, are they going to be around as long as I am? We know that women live longer than men, so you start to think about that dynamic playing out.
In other words, the factory is laying off workers, and she's worried there won't be a production manager around to fulfill her orders. And she's right. She should be worried because once you hit about 24, ladies, that factory starts wearing down and running out of parts and materials. So yeah, I guess you should be thinking about that. But why you think that makes it a good thing? Well, again, there's that female logic.
I also start to consider things like, when I retire, is he going to be able to travel and get around with me like I would hope to with my partner?
Or to put it another way, is he going to fund and pay for my travel because the likelihood of my having the money to do so is pretty small, and with a credit rating lower than my bra size, I need him to be able to cover the cost of my expectations and dreams. You know, be a good provider.
Unless a guy is ultra wealthy and in his mid to late 40s, I think that it is actually near impossible for him to obtain a woman in their 20s or 30s, just because women are becoming more successful and independent.
Translation, I'm a princess and deserve a rich man who will take care of me. And if he isn't rich, not to mention 6 feet tall with six-pack abs and the ubiquitous 6-inch you-know-what, Well, then he obviously can't find a woman, can't get a date. Again, it goes to the cope and how they create the falsehoods in their mind in order to fit that cope, doesn't it?
And women get their emotional connections from other women, so it's just not as necessary.
You say emotional connections, we say narcissism, delusions of grandeur, and completely unrealistic expectations and demands.
I also believe that men who are high value and truly intelligent are looking for a select few high value women as well.
Should I tell her? I mean, I'm not going to say it to be mean. I'm just going to try and be real with her, but you know she's not going to take it that way. All right. Let's see if I can put this as nicely as I can. Darling, and again, I mean this with all due respect and in the nicest possible way, high value men are looking for a few select women, but I'm sorry to say, you aren't one of them. They're looking for women that are grounded in reality. They're looking for women that are going to bring them peace, not chaos. And they're looking for women that haven't hit the wall. Again, I'm not trying to put you down, but I am being brutally honest with you for your own good. Oh, and by the way, men see right through your mindset. You know, the one where you just threw in how only high-value men are intelligent, and high value is what you determine it to be, not what it actually is. Again, this is just another example of the illogic and unrealistic demands today's modern women have.
And it would lead away from those more transactional relationships where, you know, a woman may not have as strong of a career and may be looking for a man who has money and is okay if they're not that great and not good at relationships and treat them poorly, but then that's more transactional and not a genuine relationship.
Oh, good God, more word salad. All right, I'll give her this. She is right about the transactional part, and considering that every woman views relationships these days as transactional, as in what's in it for me and only me, it's pretty obvious why women who've already hit the wall end up getting so angry, so bitter, and start creating these delusions in order to cope. Cope with the reality that men aren't buying what they're selling.
I do think it's so funny that men seem to think that they're okay dating into their 40s. But I really think that they should be concerned after 40, especially if they're going to be ageist towards women and not date women who are in their late 30s, which a lot of them do act that way.
Oh, honey, nice try, but it's not ageism like you so desperately want to believe. It's that men don't want to deal with your toxicity, your clearly misandrist mindset, your unrealistic demands and expectations, and your constant denial of reality. Denial of all of the above, which you've put on display in your video. That has nothing to do with age. It has to do with you.
So yeah, this is just economics by Kate. I don't think men have as much value in their mid 40s, especially under the pretense that they are able to date any woman in their 20s and 30s. It's just simply not true.
Again, darling, you can say it's not true all you want. You can actually believe it all you want. But the only person you're fooling is yourself. And it's why you, like so many other women, are going to end up alone. Because more than anything else, what you're doing is driving men away from you. Driving them away with your personality, your mindset, and your deeply rooted toxicity. Not to mention your refusal to dwell in reality. Again, I'm not trying to put you down. I'm not trying to be mean here. But you aren't doing yourself any favors making videos like this and thinking that in doing so, somehow it's going to make men feel more attracted to you. And you're not helping other women either. You're hurting them by teaching them to think this way, which in turn means men will reject and avoid them. Which is, in the end, let's be honest, really what it's all about, isn't it? Because you see, for women like this lady, they know the wall is undefeated and they've all run headfirst into it already. They know that the men they want, those 9s and 10s, aren't going to give them a second glance anymore. Hell, those of us in the 4s, 5s, and 6s aren't either. Because, well, who in their right mind would want to deal with someone, male or female, who thinks this way? Thus, these women need to find a way to live with it. Live with the reality that time has passed them by. And thus they deny that reality even exists and instead make up a completely different one in which they can put all the blame on men, one where they can project onto men that which is the reality they're trying to avoid. I actually feel sorry for this young lady because not only doesn't she get it, she never will. And ultimately, it's going to end up with her spending the rest of her nights alone. And honestly, I take no pleasure in saying that. If anything, I feel pity. Pity for her and pity for all the women like her, which these days is most of them. But in the end, they have no one to blame but themselves. And sadly, it's them who's going to end up paying the price.